At 13:47 hours local time, South China Sea, the Type 05-D destroyer Luoyang 3 made what would become the most embarrassing tactical mistake of the decade. The Chinese warship commander ordered his vessel to close within 150 yards of the USS Chung-Hoon, an Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer. He thought he was sending a message. What he actually did was hand the United States Navy a textbook example of how not to conduct naval intimidation. The USS Chung-Hoon is an Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyer. This class of warship carries the Aegis combat system, which tracks and engages over 100 targets simultaneously using advanced phased array radar. The ship displaces 9,200 tons and stretches 505 feet long. It was not impressed. The Chinese Type 05-D destroyer approached from the port side. The math was simple. At 150 yards, the Chinese ship entered what naval tacticians call the commitment zone. Inside this distance, neither vessel could maneuver effectively without risking collision. The Chinese commander had just locked himself into a game of chicken with a ship that had better engines, better sensors, and better training. At 13:49 hours, the Chung-Hoon's radar operators watched the Chinese destroyer's approach vector. The Type 05-D was accelerating. Its bow wave grew larger. The Chinese captain was committing to his intercept course. What they didn't know was that the Chung-Hoon had already calculated 17 different evasion scenarios. The American crew had run this exact situation in simulators 43 times in the previous 6 months. The Type 05-D Luoyang 3 destroyer is China's modern surface combatant. It carries 60 for vertical launch cells for missiles and operates the Type 3 for 6A active electronically scanned array radar. The ship represents decades of Chinese naval development. None of that mattered when physics became their enemy. At 13:51 hours, the Chinese warship crossed the 200-yard threshold. American sailors on deck could see Chinese crew members filming with phones. The Chinese were documenting what they thought would be a propaganda victory. They were actually recording their own tactical failure. The Chung-Hoon's captain made his decision at 13:52 hours. He ordered full speed ahead. The Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer uses for General Electric LM-500 gas turbines. These engines generate 100,000 shaft horsepower combined. The ship surged forward like a racehorse breaking from the gate. The Chinese commander had miscalculated everything. He assumed the American destroyer would slow down or turn away. This was stupid. The Chung-Hoon had right of way under international maritime law. The Chinese vessel was the overtaking ship. By naval convention and legal precedent, the burden to avoid collision rested entirely on the Type 05-D. At 13:53 hours, the Chinese destroyer's bow wash hit the Chung-Hoon's hull. The American ship didn't flinch. Its displacement advantage meant the wave impact was negligible. Meanwhile, the Type 05-D's crew suddenly realized they were running out of ocean. The geometry was hilarious. The Chinese ship had committed to an intercept angle that required the American destroyer to cooperate. The Chung-Hoon did not cooperate. The Chinese captain ordered emergency rudder at 13:54 hours. Too late. The Type 05-D's turning radius at that speed exceeded 1,200 yards. The ship began its turn, but momentum carried it forward. The Chinese destroyer's stern swung wide, exactly as basic naval physics predicted. The vessel crossed directly ahead of the Chung-Hoon at a distance of just 140 yards. What happened next was textbook American tactical doctrine. The Chung-Hoon maintained course and speed. Its wake struck the Type 05-D broadside. The Chinese destroyer rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Sailors on deck grabbed railings, equipment shifted. Someone's propaganda phone probably went overboard. At 13:56 hours, the Chinese destroyer completed its embarrassing turn. The ship had cut across the bow of an American warship, violated multiple maritime conventions, and achieved absolutely nothing except international humiliation. The entire maneuver was captured by maritime patrol aircraft, satellite imagery, and probably a dozen other intelligence platforms. The USS Chung-Hoon's SPY-1D radar is a three-dimensional air search radar system. It can track ballistic missiles, aircraft, and surface targets across hundreds of miles. Throughout the entire incident, the system never went to elevated alert status. The American crew treated the Chinese aggression like a minor navigation nuisance. At 13:58 hours, the Type 05-D attempted to regain some dignity. The warship matched speed with the Chung-Hoon at a distance of 400 yards. This was more embarrassing than the original intercept. The Chinese ship was now following the American destroyer like a puppy trailing its owner. The power dynamic was crystal clear to every naval professional who saw the footage. The Chinese propaganda machine went into overdrive within hours. State media claimed their destroyer had warned away the American vessel. This was a lie so transparent it became an international joke. Ship tracking data, radar logs, and video evidence showed exactly what happened. The Chinese warship made an aggressive move, failed to execute it competently, and then retreated to a safe distance. At 14:15 hours, the tactical situation had completely stabilized. The Chung-Hoon continued its transit through international waters. The Type 05-D shadowed from a respectful distance. The Chinese commander had learned an expensive lesson about the difference between looking aggressive and being effective. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer represents decades of American naval engineering and operational experience. These ships have operated in every ocean under every condition. Their crews train constantly for exactly these kinds of confrontations. The institutional knowledge embedded in the U.S. Navy surface warfare community is impossible to replicate through technology alone. What made the incident particularly stupid was the strategic context. The South China Sea dispute requires China to project an image of maritime competence. Instead, this confrontation demonstrated the opposite. The Type 05-D's crew showed poor tactical judgment, weak situational awareness, and inadequate seamanship. These are not qualities that inspire confidence in a rising naval power. At 14:45 hours, the Chinese destroyer broke off completely. The Type 05-D turned north and increased speed. The warship retreated toward Hainan Island. The entire confrontation had lasted 58 minutes. In that time, China had damaged its own international credibility more effectively than any American public relations campaign could have managed. The USS Chung-Hoon is named after Rear Admiral Gordon Chung-Hoon, a World War II hero who earned the Navy Cross and Silver Star. The ship carries that legacy of professionalism and tactical excellence. The crew's conduct during the confrontation honored that tradition perfectly. They remained calm, followed procedures, and let Chinese mistakes speak for themselves. The Type 05-D destroyer that conducted the intercept returned to port the following day. Chinese naval analysts surely conducted an after-action review. The conclusions must have been brutal. The commander had achieved nothing except demonstrating that aggressive posturing requires competent execution to be effective. At 16:30 hours, the Chung-Hoon cleared the area completely. The destroyer continued its scheduled patrol. The crew returned to normal operations. For them, the incident was already routine. They had trained for worse. They had handled it professionally. Mission accomplished. The propaganda value of the confrontation flowed entirely to the United States. Video footage circulated through defense media worldwide. Naval analysts from allied countries watched Chinese tactics and found them wanting. The incident became a teaching case for what not to do during maritime confrontations. The SLQ-3 electronic warfare suite aboard the Chung-Hoon monitored Chinese communications throughout the encounter. This system detects, identifies, and counters enemy radar and radio emissions. The Americans knew exactly what the Chinese were saying, planning, and thinking during every moment of the confrontation. This intelligence advantage was never publicly acknowledged, but it existed. At 1800 hours, American naval intelligence finished their preliminary assessment. The Chinese intercept was classified as unprofessional, but not threatening. This clinical language masked the reality. The Type 05-D's maneuvers were dangerous, illegal under maritime law, and ultimately unsuccessful. The assessment was diplomatic. The truth was harsher. The strategic implications extended far beyond one-ship confrontation. Regional allies watched how China conducted itself. They saw aggression without competence. They saw provocation without success. This reinforced existing doubts about Chinese naval professionalism and made American security partnerships more attractive by comparison. The USS Chung-Hoon deployed from Pearl Harbor as part of regular Indo-Pacific operations. The destroyer's presence in the South China Sea was routine and legal. The Chinese response transformed a normal transit into an international incident that damaged Beijing's interests. This was a self-inflicted wound created by poor tactical decision-making. At 2,100 hours, the Chung-Hoon's crew held their regular evening briefing. The confrontation rated maybe 5 minutes of discussion. For professional American sailors, this was just another day dealing with unprofessional opponents who confused aggressive behavior with effective tactics. The final tally was embarrassing for China on every level. 0 tactical advantage gained, 0 strategic objectives achieved, maximum international attention on Chinese maritime unprofessionalism. The Type 05-D's commander had turned a routine encounter into a propaganda disaster for his own country. The United States Navy operates under the principle that actions speak louder than words. The Chung-Hoon's conduct during the confrontation embodied that principle perfectly. No aggressive maneuvering, no inflammatory communications. Just steady professional seamanship that let Chinese mistakes speak for themselves. The incident joined a growing catalog of Chinese maritime unprofessionalism. Similar confrontations had occurred with American, Australian, Canadian, and Japanese vessels. Each incident followed the same pattern: aggressive Chinese behavior. Professional Allied response: Chinese embarrassment. The pattern was becoming predictable and counterproductive for Beijing. At midnight local time, the USS Chung-Hoon maintained its patrol schedule. The crew rotated watches normally. The ship's operations continued without interruption. The Chinese destroyer that had attempted intimidation was nowhere in sight. It had retreated hours earlier, mission failed, credibility damaged. The confrontation proved what naval professionals already knew. Aggressive posturing requires competent execution to be effective. The Chinese had aggression, but lacked the seamanship and tactical judgment to back it up. The result was predictable humiliation captured on video for the world to analyze. Should other navies study this incident as a textbook example of how aggressive tactics fail without professional execution? Bye for now.